hold on a second here.
Yeah.
There we go. How's that?
We got camera.
You can say something to Jake Voráček directly to him.
Jakey, can't wait to see you again and give you a big kiss on your forehead.
I was dealing about contract for Hronek.
And when we asked him, he said, I don't know.
And I said, I don't know. I said, I have no idea. I have no idea.
There's a lot of detail that goes into working out a contract like that. Carlo Vivari didn't want him. No other agent wanted him. And I'm always been really proud of Zbyněk because he always believed.
Vážení posluchači, diváci, vítám vás u další epizody hokejového podcastu Puk Pak Pivo. Tomáši, ahoj, opět ve Vegas.
Honzo, děkuji za přivítání. Jsem nadšený tady z tohohle studia, koukám tady na ty kamery. Je to profesionální, je to nádherný, vy asi koukáte, tak valíte bulvy.
Je to tak, ale pochopitelně dnešní epizodu budeme muset mít v angličtině.
To je dobře.
Děkujeme parťákům, kteří zařídili to, aby i český posluchači, kteří anglicky neumějí, z toho měli velký zážitek. A pojďme přepnout do angličtiny.
Okay, hello guys who's listening, welcome in Las Vegas again.
Yeah, it's been a while, but we are here together again, and I'm really happy that I can welcome our guest, and it's ALLAN WALSH. ALLAN, hello.
Hello.
Short introduction, because your name is also very well known in the Czech Republic, but for the guys who are not that much into hockey, so you are the agent of the many Czech players.
Yes, I started representing Czech players probably 25 years ago. And over the years have represented players like Martin Havlat, Patrick Eliáš, Tomáš Vokun, Ondřej Pavelec, Míša Frolik, Roman Polak, Rostislav Oleš, and we can go on and on and on. Peter Sikora, Marek Židlický. I don't want to leave anybody out and get anybody mad.
Yeah, you know, I'm pretty sure.
Milan Michálek, Zbyněk Michálek.
Yeah, brothers. I mean, I guess a lot of stories, right? But before, when we get to the hockey, I know your history. Iggy told me what you did before you started being the hockey agent. Can you tell us what was before your hockey career?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Montreal, and I went to university there. I played university hockey. Actually, on my team at McGill University, it was Mike Babcock.
Okay.
So we played together at McGill for a little while. I then went to law school in Los Angeles with the idea that I was going to work in hockey in some way after becoming a lawyer. And my last year in law school, I started working as a prosecutor intern in the court. And I loved it so much. When I finished my law school and passed the California bar exam to officially become licensed as a lawyer, I went to work as a prosecutor, as a deputy district attorney. And I was in the court for 4 straight years doing nothing but prosecuting murder cases.
Oh.
And I was in a unit called the Hardcore Gang Division, where every case I handled was a gang murder case. And between the ages of 25 and 30 years of age, I prosecuted over 40 murder cases.
Here in States?
In LA, downtown LA, in the downtown LA criminal courts building. You know, it's just like you see in the movies with a jury and the judge and the defendant, the person who allegedly committed the crime, although we know he always did it, you know, sitting over there on the other side. And there was nobody helping me. I had no assistance. It was just go into court and try the case. 25 years old.
I got goosebumps. I cannot even imagine that in the age of 25 or 30 doing things like that.
Good. Yeah. It's good school for a hockey agent, right?
It was a great preparation for becoming a hockey agent and negotiating with general managers.
Oh, yeah. It's easy job.
We have to stage here because we didn't. You do?
Oh, yeah, sure. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Na zdravě?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Na zdraví, na zdraví.
Na zdraví, na zdraví. So, how you said, hockey managers. What was the thing you said, stop, I'm not gonna be procurator anymore, and you jumped back to the hockey?
I tried my last murder case. It was a 18-year-old high school honor student who ended up, it's a long story, but he ended up in an alleyway where he was murdered by 2 gang members. And I tried that case. It lasted several months, and that case almost killed me. I had rashes on my body. Hair was falling out, not like now, but back in the day when I had a lot of hair. And it literally made me physically ill, the stress and the pressure of that case. And when I was finished and the jury came back guilty of first-degree murder, I felt like I could never bring myself to try another case. That was the most difficult case I ever tried. It was the longest case that lasted in the court that I ever tried. And when it was over, it just felt like the perfect end for that part of my professional life.
Okay.
And then you start thinking about to be a hockey agent?
Yes.
Or somebody like call you and say, Alan, do you want to do something funny?
So when I was growing up, I played hockey. I loved hockey. I was like a hockey encyclopedia. When I was 7, 8 years old, I was reading every hockey book that was ever written. And I knew a lot about the history of the game. And I was always fascinated by the business side of hockey. My father was my best friend and my hero, and he went on a lot of business trips. And every business trip he went on, he would go into a bookstore, he would buy a hockey book, and he would come home from his business trip, and I would run to the door, grab the book, say hello, and go to my room and read the book, and I wouldn't come out until I was finished reading the entire book. That's at 7 and 8 and 9 years old. By the time I was 18, I probably read just about every book on hockey that was ever published. I had hundreds of books. I still have them. I've kept them all to this day. In my garage are boxes and boxes and boxes filled with hockey books. And it's an amazing game. It brings me here, and it's given me a livelihood. It brings you here.
Oh yeah.
We all share. I mean, I don't know you very well. I've had really nice meeting with you, but I could sit down with you today, and I know that the 3 of us, we have hockey in our hearts, and that's the common bond that we all have and we all share together. And it comes from the game, and I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to find a place for myself inside that game. So I started calling people. I started asking questions, learning as much as I could about different areas of the business side of the game. And I've always been a player's guy. I've always believed in, the player side of every problem or issue or dispute. So I said, why not represent players?
Oh yeah.
And a journalist that I knew in Montreal recommended I go meet this man. He was one of the biggest NHL agents in the 1970s. And his name was David Shadia. And he had gotten completely out of the business in the early 1980s. So he'd been out for 15 years. But at one time, he represented 140 players between the NHL and the WHA in the 1970s. So I give him a call. I don't know him. And I leave him a message to please call me back. And about a half an hour, I get a call back. This is David Shadia. How can I help you? And I explained to him I'm a lawyer in Los Angeles, and I'd like to get some advice from him on how to start a hockey agency. And would he be willing to meet with me? I was in Montreal, and he's based in Montreal. And he said, you come down to my office tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I'll give you 20 minutes. And he hung up. So I'm like, oh, this is a strict guy. I go down to his office. I get let in. It was the biggest office I had ever seen in my life. You could land an airplane in his office. And he had this giant desk, and he was sitting on this huge chair. It looked like a Louis XIV throne. And it was like I was coming in for an audience with the king. And I come in and I sit down behind this massive desk, and he starts talking to me. And he said, how can I help you? And I said, well, I'm interested in becoming a hockey agent. And I know that many years ago, you were one of the biggest ones. How does someone like me start? And we just started talking. And
he was fired up into the hockey also.
Oh, yes. And remember, he said, you have 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still there talking with him after 2 hours.
Yeah.
And now it's 3 hours. And now we're going close to 4 hours. And he's sitting back and he's telling stories about different negotiations. And he represented some great, great Hall of Fame players, Denny Potvin, Brian Trottier, Billy Smith, Larry Robinson, some of the great players in the history of the game. And when he was finished telling his stories and we were finished talking, he said to me, you know something, kid? Maybe there's a way that you and I could do something together. I've always regretted getting out of the hockey business, and I would love maybe to find a way to get back in. So we started talking about that. And another half hour later, we shook hands that day on a 50-50 partnership and remained partners together for 10 years until he retired.
Okay.
That's great start, right?
Yeah.
One call, 20 minutes, and you had a job.
So he knew why he called back on that message.
Exactly. and we worked together for 10 years. After 3 years, we had 20 players in the NHL. And we started from nothing. No players, 0 clients. I would sit down with players and I'd say, so who do you represent? And I said, we don't have anybody yet. If you would sign with us, you would be the first.
What did they say? Who was your first?
So my first ever client was a player on the Boston Bruins by the name of Dean Chenoweth.
Mm-hmm.
And he last year was assistant coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So he played 5 or 6 years in the NHL after I started representing him. I did 2 contracts for him. And, you know, we would meet people and I would always say to them one thing. I may not have history and experience, but I have David's experience with me and we're partners. But nobody will work harder for you. Nobody will be there for you more than we will.
Yeah.
And I think that if you look back now, it's my 30th year in the business. And you talk to the players that we've represented, including many of the great Czech players in hockey history, I think they'll tell you, I never said I'm the smartest guy. I never said I'm the greatest guy at All I can tell you is that my players are in here and nobody will work harder for them and fight for them more than I will. That's the only thing I can promise you.
That's cool. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of people can confirm it from the Czech Republic. The thing is, back in the days when the old hockey was played here in the US and first European players went to the NHL, so it was a big deal, you know, for them after the communism and some kind of the players before. But they had a really difficult role in the team as a European players because of, you know, stigma of other players from Canada and US. What was your position in that case? And when did you start represent Czech players? How did you get a contact, or what is the story behind representing Czech players?
So the NHL draft in 1998, an NHL scout came up to me and said, "Allan, you're really making a good name for yourself. My general manager was saying really good things about you in one of the meetings. There is a group of Czech NHL scouts, and they would like to have a meeting with you." I go, "Me?" And I can tell you, I did not know a lot about what was going on in Czech Republic
Okay.
at the time. I knew the history.
Yeah.
I watched the famous game from 1972 between Team Canada and the Czech national
It
team.
was Czechoslovakia back in the day, right?
It was Czechoslovakia back in the day. I was enthralled with Jiří Holeček in the net.
Oh, yeah.
It was right after the Summit Series with Soviet Union, and it was the game 3-3 tie with all of these great NHL All-Stars and all these great famous Czechoslovak players. So I had a respect and a deep appreciation for the tradition and history of Czech hockey, and a group of scouts wanted to meet with me. I had no idea what they wanted. So we go sit down in a bar and we all have a couple of pivos with us. And I say, how can I help you guys? What can I do for you? And they explained to me that at that time in Czech Republic, around 1997, there were basically two agents.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire country of hockey players were represented by one agency or the other. And each agency represented hundreds of players. And they said, Allan, there are so many players and families who, their agent is doing nothing for them. They sign everybody and then they can't get calls back. There's really good hockey players who could come over to North America and, live their dream of trying to play in the NHL. And they only give attention to the few best players and everybody else is kind of thrown away and there's no other options. And I said, well, that's sad, but what can I do about that? And they said, please come to Czech Republic. We will introduce you to coaches, to scouts, to parents, to players. We will be your way of introducing you to the country if you'd be willing to come. So I got on a plane and I flew to Vienna and I rented a car and I drove my first meeting to Znojmo. And I went from Znojmo meeting 3 players and their families to Třebíč. I met a coach, junior coach in Třebíč. Then I drove to Brno and I stayed in Brno for 3 nights and met a whole group of players in Brno who were playing, 14, 15, 16 years old. And then I drove from Brno to Praha and I went to Sparta. I went to Slavia. I was going all over the city, meeting with people. I went up to Pilsen, Olomouc, back to Prague. And then I ended up making my way back to Brno and up to Ostrava. And I went to the Vitkovice arena and met with
That's
a bunch
where I'm
of,
from.
Really, a great area. Ostrava, my favorite steakhouse in Czech is their Brny Steakhouse.
Brny?
On
the Stodolní.
Yeah, right on the corner from the Imperial Hotel. I know it very well. And I was amazed and felt a tremendous connection. I don't know why, with the Czech people that I was meeting. I found them to be honest and they loved hockey and they loved meeting somebody directly from North America. And some of the players and parents were telling me, we have this Czech agent and we never meet the person from North America and we never know if we're getting the right answers and things aren't happening and my son wasn't drafted and we don't know why and he would like to go play junior and he can't get a call back. And that was my first trip. I was there for 11 days and I started with probably 10 players and started building from there. And I just kept coming back. And I have been to Czechia now over 70 times since my first trip in 1997.
Wow.
What a story, right? So you signed somebody at the first trip, right?
Yeah, I left that first trip with around 10 players.
10 players.
Signed.
Who
But
was your first Czech?
But all very young players.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Many of them never got drafted. Some did. Some ended up coming over to North America. But really, my first big Czech client was Martin Havlat. So Martin Havlat I had met Martin. He was drafted by Ottawa in the first round. And, Marty Havlat, I represented him for almost his entire NHL career. And he's like my family, right? We are like blood brothers. And we went through incredible times together, great times, bad times, but we did it together and we were like family. And Marty was playing for Třinec the year after being drafted. He stayed in Czech, and Hronek was his coach in Třinec. And we ended up having a meeting together, me and Marty and my translator, because he didn't speak any English, in Friedrich Místek, in a Mexican restaurant off the side of the highway in Friedrich. And we went there and we had like a 1.5 hour meeting. He was 17, turning 18, and it was really nice. But he said, it's, really nice to meet you. And I great to hear so much detail about you and your history and your thoughts and philosophy on representing players. But I have an agent right now, and I'm staying here for the year, and I hope to go to Ottawa next year. And happy to stay in touch with you. So then the next time I saw Marty was at the World Juniors in Sweden, when the World Juniors were in Umeå and Skellefteå, and Czech Republic won the gold medal. And Marty was a key player on that team.
It's the last one, right?
Maybe last Czech gold medal.
And when Czech won the medal, Marty was the last player still on the ice, and he had the medal around his neck, and he was skating around in circles on a cell phone, talking. And he comes off the ice and he sees me, he comes over. We gave each other this huge hug. And I said, "Who are you talking to on the phone?" And he goes, "My father." And then he went running into the dressing room with all the people cheering and all the celebration going on. And then the next year, Marty comes to Ottawa. He signed his NHL contract, and he had an amazing rookie camp. And goes to the main training camp, has an amazing training camp, and makes the team. And he and I are talking to each other every couple of days. We're texting each other. And it just naturally, during that year, when we got to the end of the season, he was a finalist for NHL Rookie of the Year. And he said to me at the end of the year, I would love to be, work with you, and I would love for you to be my agent. And that's officially when we started working together. When he became my client, it was all of these younger guys that I had worked with in Czech. Many of them were just coming up after him. So there was Milan Michálek a few years later, who was drafted 6th overall by San Jose. And his older brother, Zbyněk, is a funny story. I was meeting with Milan's mother and father, Milan and Zbyněk. And the father was telling me that no agent wanted to represent Zbyněk. And the father said, "We want one agent for the two boys." And we have said to a couple of agents before even knowing about you or meeting you, Milan will sign with you, but you have to also represent Zbyněk. And the agent said no.
Okay,
no interest to even represent him, even if it means you get to represent Milan. Now, keep in mind at the time, Zbyněk was literally sent away from Karlovy Vary. And Milan was at 14 considered one of the best future Czech prospects in history. Many people had considered him a future #1 overall pick when he was 14 and 15. So I fought like crazy to get Zbyněk to the CHL and to have a team give him a chance. And he finally got a chance at Shawinigan and played really good there for a couple of years, learned the North American game, still never drafted, passed over in 3 drafts. And then I convinced the GM of the Minnesota Wild to give Zbyněk an invitation to rookie camp only. So he goes to rookie camp and the GM calls me and he goes, "Hey, Alan, that kid with the funny name." I said, "Zbyněk?" He goes, "Yeah, I keep pronouncing it wrong." He says, "So I always call him," he goes, "all my scouts are laughing. I call him the kid with the funny name." He goes, he's from Sweden, right?" I said, "Czech." "Oh, yeah. Czech. Yeah, we're gonna bring him to our big camp. He's played pretty well." Great. Goes to the big camp. He starts getting some exhibition games, NHL exhibition games. He calls me up at the end of camp. "Hey, Alan, yeah, we're gonna sign him. We're gonna offer him a contract." So they signed him to an entry-level contract. And at the time, the Minnesota Wild's farm team was in Houston in the American Hockey League. So Zbyněk goes to Houston and played there a couple of years, played really well, got called up to Minnesota, played some games in Minnesota, played really well. And that was the beginning. He ended up in the NHL. One day, like, he established himself as an everyday player, became an unrestricted free agent, and signed a $20 million plus contract with the Pittsburgh Penguins as a unrestricted free agent. From the guy that nobody wanted, Carlo Vivari didn't want him, no other agent wanted him. And I'm always been really proud of Zbyněk because he always believed in himself. And he just needed somebody to believe in him. And he's, I've represented him for more than half his life. And he's just a tremendous, tremendous person. He's a great father now, just a great person. And I'm honored to have played that role in his life.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Amazing story.
Everybody knows them in Czech Republic, those brothers. But I'm pretty sure they don't know this kind of the story because I never heard that. Also in like Czech TV, maybe Robert Zaruba doesn't know that story.
Robert maybe doesn't know.
And he knows almost everything.
You said you called the GM. He gave you this information. How changed the communication from these days to this year with the GMs? Is it still same? Or the GMs change also?
The most of the GMs today, when I started as the agent, I was dealing a lot with Glenn Sather, who just retired today from the NHL, David Poyle, Cliff Fletcher. Many of the GMs were GMs who've been around for 20, 30 years, and I was the new kid, right? And there was a big group of scouts that I got to know really well, traveling to World Juniors, and you sit at the same airports waiting for the same flights, and you stay at the same hotels, and you eat in the same restaurants with all of the scouts and all the assistant GMs who come to these big tournaments, like the big international ones, under 18 world championships, sometimes 5 nations, during the national team break in November and February, 4 nations. And you're with them on the road all the time. Sometimes you share a car going to a game. A lot of those scouts that I met and assistant GMs that I met earlier in my career ended up growing into becoming general managers. So I knew Ray Shiro when he was director of hockey operations with Ottawa. And then he went to Nashville where he was assistant GM for many years. And then he's general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins for many years. And I had at one time half the players on the Pittsburgh Penguins. And he and I were doing business on 8 or 9 different players, but he and I used to sit in restaurants and hotel bars together 8, 9 years ago. So we had that relationship where we kind of together grew up into our jobs, as opposed to being the new kid on the block making a call to Glenn Sather. So now, being 30 years in the business, there's a group of younger guys who've come into the NHL. Kyle Davidson in Chicago is one. I just had a meeting earlier today with Bill Armstrong, the general manager in Utah. He was a scout with St. Louis for 16 years before becoming the GM in Arizona. You know, and you get to know a lot of these guys. You know, we all live a hockey life. We all live a life on the road. I'm on the road maybe 4 months a year. I used to be on the road probably closer to 6 months a year. So you build relationships, and those relationships that you build, you know, you become a little bit more prominent in your business, and they become a little bit more prominent in the NHL. And we've all grown into our lives together.
So now when you're talking about some contract, it's like you're talking somebody from high school, some friend from high school.
Not with everyone, but if there was a recording device in the room and people could actually hear how contracts get negotiated and the discussions going on, you know, many of the GMs, I know their families, I know their wives, they know my wife, they know my families. And it's a very, you don't go into a negotiation and start yelling and pounding the table, screaming. You know, it may be like that in a movie or the way people imagine it to be in their minds.
1 million more.
Yeah. Show me the money. Yeah. But it's not really like that in real life.
How was dealing about contract for Hronek?
Oh. Kladno in that age group, there was Pavelets and Misha Frolik and Jakey and Tlusty, who all grew up together, all grew up playing hockey together. They were all best friends together. Amazing to think that Pavi and Frolik and Tlusty played on the same NHL team together for a little while in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
It's
Winnipeg,
an amazing thing, the 3 guys from Kladno to be on the same team like that. So
only Jakey is missing. Can you imagine that?
Oh my God.
All together in the Winnipeg.
I actually can't. I actually can't. There's the allocation of salary each year of the contract. Phil's contract is front loaded. I mean, the numbers are public now. It starts at $9.5 million a year and ends at $5.7 million a year. It averages 7.25. So it was very important when I was negotiating this deal to have it front loaded. So there's all these other issues, and then very important. And I've said to people, tell me the last time you remember a 26 or 27-year-old defenseman on the market with 40, 45 points in the NHL, right shot, available. And everybody's like, well, they're never available. They always sign, right? And they're making, you know, 8 million, 9 million, 7 million, but they're not available.